Vincent van Gogh. So, the life of Vincent van Gogh started when he was born on March 30th, 1853 in the Netherlands. At 15 years old, he started working at his uncle's dealership. And by that time he was fluent in multiple languages, including French, German, and English. In 1873, he was transferred to London to another art dealership, and soon after being heartbroken in London, he started to devote his life to God. But after not being accepted into any schools of theology, he began his career in art. After being again rejected and falling in love and being utterly depressed, he started to really devote himself to art, but sadly enough, he suffered of mental illness, which left him to end his life by a self-inflicted gunshot. While being in Paris, Van Gogh was actually quite fond of Impressionism. He was quite influenced by it, and some of the key points of Impressionism are loose brushstrokes, pure intense color schemes, abandonment of linear perspective. They have no clarity in form, and they do not really rely on realistic depictions. It's much more of what you depict to see in your reality rather than what is in front of you. Impressionism, some examples of Impressionism, some artists are Claude Monet, Berthe Morisot, and Edgar Degas. A few of these examples are Sunrise of 1872, which, as you can see, has there's not much clarity within the figures, and the brushstrokes are very evident and prominent, and the colors are very intense but very pure and light. Whereas in the Star, the colors are very intense, but they're much darker. And then in a Park, 1874, by Berthe Morisot, is much more realistic. The forms are much more concise, but there's still quite not a sense of clarity as before. And in another piece by Claude Monet that was done in 1879, it's much less clear because he is depicting fog as how he saw it and how it really did not allow you to see farther, to see much more. So it is much evidently so, given the non-clarity and what the viewer depicts to be what the reality is rather than what the reality is in front of them, is a great example of what Impressionism is. And now as for Van Gogh was characterized as a post-impressionist artist, and the key points of this are that they hold symbolic and personal meaning. Their abstract forms and patterns, structure, order, and optical effects dominated aesthetics. So, Van Gogh is considered a post-impressionist artist due to the personal meaning and the symbolicness of his art, held especially due to his mental illness. And some of the summaries of his work are The Potato Eaters, which is one of his first pieces, which, as you can see, depicts from what he saw, and he was very direct in titles of his art, as you see as examples of the potato eaters, and they are people eating potatoes, and they are people at supper, and the cafe Terence at night is a cafe Terence at night. And he was very direct, but in his paintings, the way that he depicted them are very particular in the sense of that they do hold some elements of Impressionism, especially in particular with Starry Night, as you don't see there's no clarity in these forms or these shapes, but you do see shapes, you see swirls, you see spheres, and you see the squares and the rectangles of the village below, and they hold quite emotion and provoke emotion, as for example the 14 Sunflowers, they provoke some type of sadness and kind of boring type of emotion, and Cafe Terence provides like a lively kind of soothing atmosphere, and the Potato Eaters represent like a sad time, something of when people were having financial troubles. The elements and principles of design To name a few that Van Gogh used were shapes. Many shapes used, as mentioned before, are rectangles, spheres, and triangles. The forms, many of his artworks have forms of either human figures and landscapes. The forms are you can very easily depict them, and you can see whether it's a human or whether it's a landscape that he's trying to showcase. And the colors, the range of colors that Van Gogh uses are very intense yet light. In particular, with Starry Night, he uses bright, cool tone colors to capture attention, to really grasp what he was trying to recall and remember, since it was painted while he was in the asylum. The texture, the brush strokes are very much so prominent and seen throughout his artworks. The swirl type of strokes gives it dimension, in Starry Night in particular. The functions of art. Van Gogh was known for his having emotions and unstable mental state. Art became an outlet for him, therefore his art had a function of self-expression. He was depressed, but most people, often than not, when you do go through depression, you're self-expressing either a longing or a desire, and I think Starry Night in particular is quite the example of that. His world around him depicted to be very unstable. So, as you can see the weather passing through, and it gives it this type of sense of security and some type of hope and grace and peacefulness throughout the night. Art criticism. One of the theories that most critics associate Van Gogh with is emotionalism, due to the fact that he did suffer through mental illness, and his most famous painting, Starry Night, which was created by memory during a dark time, yet there's still some type of grace and hopefulness within this, and it creates this emotionalism, is that even though he was depressed and even though he had the life he had, his artwork still gives people some type of peace, and no matter if they're feeling depressed, it provokes that emotion while looking at it. And these are the references that I used to create this artistic video.